Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Cancel the Service? You bet. I work in roadside assistance as a third party for a lot of insurance companies. Like most customer service jobs, we get a heck of a lot of abuse. But the most of it comes from long wait times and or not being fully covered. This happens often, but I very rarely am in the position where I get to see the fallout. Recently, I had a woman call in. She was completely pleasant, but in a huge rush, so she was a little snippy. No worries, I get it. But then it comes to letting her know that she's not covered for assistance, and she has a huge out-of-pocket expense. She whines about the fact that he knows she has roadside. Then, that she supposedly set up the service earlier, so not only am I trying to charge her, but it's taking too long. And therefore, the price should be waived. Finally, she gives up and tells me I'm useless and says, just cancel it, and hangs up. Being the good rep that I am, I call her back to confirm the disconnect was intentional. She picks up, then hangs up immediately, then sends me to voicemail on follow-up calls. So as instructed, I canceled the job request. I should note intake doesn't take long, but it's annoying to go over, and if the customer doesn't know their exact location, like being on a freeway, it can take some time. A few hours later, I get a new call from an angry customer wondering where her service is at. I apologize for the frustration, ask for her reference number, and inform her that unfortunately, there isn't any service in the system. She starts going off. I do my best to calm her down and extract the needed information. Halfway through the call, I realize it's the same angry pants woman as before. When we start going over location, I remember the drop-off location and she gets excited and says, "Oh, you found my service? Is the driver on the way? It's ridiculous that it's taking this long. You should get this prioritized or expedited." To which I reply in my nicest CSR voice, "No ma'am, your service isn't in the system. I remember when we spoke earlier. As you requested, I canceled the job at that time, so it is only getting reopened now and the amount will be X. Her. That's more than it was earlier. Me. Yes, the pricing changes through the day to continuously match the market, stay competitive, and incentivize drivers to continue taking jobs at unpopular times. Her. Silent. Me. Also, we have longer ETAs at this time, so you'll want to get this payment taken care of ASAP so we can find a service provider to avoid a longer wait. I can send a text message to you to complete payment. Her. Stutters. But I never told you to cancel it before. Me. Starting to lose patience. Ma'am, our calls are recorded, I notate obsessively, and I called you back multiple times trying to confirm. Her. I want to speak to your supervisor. Ranting to make me scared. Me. No problem, one moment. It looks like there's currently a 20-minute wait for a supervisor. I'm happy to wait with you. Her. Fine then. Get my service started. Me. Certainly. I'll send the text for payment. She finally broke down and paid it and gave up waiting for a supervisor. She swore up and down that she was going to report me. Either way, I felt vindicated with my tiny bit of a malicious compliance. The next story is titled, HOA Vandalizes Father's Truck, Gets Immediate Justice. This happened a few years back. Our HOA has always been known to be sneaky and to flat out give false accusations on homeowners. Especially in this day with security cameras, and we can pretty easily spot out who the investigators are. Most recently, a homeowner was told she was supposed to get approval before she started re-shingling her roof. The thing is, her roof hasn't been re-shingled in 10 years, and she had no plans to do it. Things like that. Call it just a mistake, call it malicious. Well, a few years ago, we had our time to shine. It was a simple morning. I was still temporarily living with my father at the time. Well, one morning, we decided to go out to get groceries, when we found that his pickup truck had been smashed into. Nothing was taken, it was just smashed into. In fact, I still have pictures from that day, just before the cops arrived. Cops arrived, they do some investigating, and found that a rock inside the truck was from a house down the street. Unfortunately, they couldn't get them to admit to the crime, nor could they prove it was even them. Understandable, criminals will grab things that they find, but it was suspicious. The rock, I should say, was a special kind of rock that no one else in the neighborhood had, some round, polished type. Very unique. After this incident, I installed a security camera on his house. Well, not 2 days later, we got an HOA violation for a vehicle eyesore that needs to be removed. Just 2 days later. I'm confused how such a letter could have been written up so fast, but I started to suspect foul play. One day, we were home and had a knock at the door. The HOA actually called a code inspection officer. The week hadn't even been over yet, so the parts to fix the truck weren't delivered yet. We weren't paying expedited shipping for damages we didn't cause, and the truck was so old insurance would probably just total it. The truck is sentimental to him, so he wasn't going to get rid of it. It still ran great. Code inspection tells my father that vehicles which do not run need to be removed. They both stop talking and take a second, and both almost say at the same time, "Don't I know you?" Turns out the code inspection officer went to the same church as my father and knew each other. This isn't the malicious compliance yet, we're only just beginning. The officer tells my father if he can show the truck starts, he's going to write it up as being in code. My father starts the truck just fine, as the engine isn't damaged. He tells him to go on with his day and to have a good one. At this point, we are furious because we're starting to suspect the HOA may have did this, as there's no way they could have possibly known so fast. Unfortunately, our turn of the street had no neighbors with security cameras until I installed one on our house, so it caught nothing specific to our incident. Down the street, these people supposedly broke into a car as well, but the camera on their house was unable to see anything. Damn. Here's where the fun begins. Fast forward a couple months, after nothing happened, I decided to install a new dash cam in my car. I found a good one that uses very little power off the battery and can activate if there's any bumps to the car, even if the car is off. It just needs to be wired straight to the battery for this. It's a thinkware. A few days later, we got a violation notice for our mailbox being crooked. It wasn't crooked much, but I do remember it recently having an angle. Odd, I could just fix it, but my car was aiming straight at the mailbox. I'm thinking, no, this couldn't be possible. It only records if there's a bump. I take out the memory card, and apparently I either didn't configure it correctly, but it was recording the whole time. It never went into sleep mode. I watched as the investigator walks up to the mailbox and pushes it crooked, then writes down on his tablet his findings and takes a picture for records. I'm appalled at what I see. I have the proof I needed. Now for the malicious compliance. They wanted us to come to the board meeting and present what is going on at our address. We haven't told them yet that we had the pictures, but to summarize real fast how our HOA works, the board hires an outside company to do the grunt work. Let's call it Bentry Management. We go to the meeting and sit down. Bentry Management has the one in control of our account, and I swear to you she looked like a Karen, so the name fits for her. As time goes by in the meeting, we get to discuss what is happening at our house. We present the timelines and tell them about the truck being smashed, and just 2 days later we get a letter. We asked what dates the investigator was out for that time. Karen refuses to answer it. She argues ignorantly that we should keep better care of our stuff, as if it was our fault. Then comes the mailbox incident. We tell her that we have reasons to believe that the investigator is the one that is causing damages to our property and is harassing us. Karen denies this and says that is impossible and that she knows him personally. Oh, is that so? I ask. She says, yes, why? I then pull out my laptop out of my book bag that I had been hiding, open it up to the video file already loaded, and show it to the entire board. Enter Exhibit A, I said out loud, and played the video. Karen's face is bright red. She says that is not her investigator. I then also pulled out the letter about the mailbox, which was complete with date. It matches the cooked on timestamp on the video. She still tries to claim it's not them. No, it's a coincidence. I'm sorry, but you have a vandal and it's not us. It's not? I let the video play, knowing she's falling into a pit hard right now. As the man walks towards my car, you can plain as day see Bentry Management on his shirt. She's no longer red now, she's white as a ghost. The board looks over at her and asks what she has to say about this. Karen is silent and has nothing except a few noises, which I assume was her brain trying to comprehend what just happened. I then proceed to bring up a previous case which I happened to remember before we left for the meeting, where we had a grass violation beside our house. Now this area they were claiming was actually not visible from the sidewalk due to the house shape. I asked point blank, has at any time your investigators walked on our property, illegally trespassing, knowing as per their rules, they aren't allowed to do that? Karen is visibly shaking now and mutters out, no, of course not, with her head down, unable to maintain eye contact with me. She probably feels that I have more evidence, but unfortunately I didn't. So I ask again. She asks, why? Our neighbor, whom are lawyers, literally next door to us where the side of this wall was, stands up and says, actually, that's not true. I've witnessed one of your investigators go between our houses and poke around the trash bins. Bingo. I didn't even realize she had this information. I couldn't have asked for more better timing. Karen, at this point, just starts arguing with our neighbors about no proof. The board proceeds to apologize for the incident and said they were going to discuss what is going to happen in the future about this. At that point, the meeting is over. A month passes, and we get a letter that a new person will be in charge of Bentry management and new investigators. She was fired that night. Since she was fired, my father tells me we only get the occasional blip of errors, but they correct it immediately and don't bother us really anymore. The next story is titled, I Pretend to Have a Giant Dog to Mess with the Neighborhood Karen. I want to start with, I love dogs. I had dogs 80% of my life. I love dogs. I just don't currently have a dog. Okay, with that in mind, here's my story. I just started living in this nice suburb at the beginning of this year. It's a quiet area, and my girlfriend and I really like it here. But there is a neighborhood Karen. She's your stereotypical retired woman just trying to find something to do with her day. And what she does is walk around the area complaining. Her complaints can be anything about anything. And most of the time, she leaves a note on people's mailboxes. I've gotten many of these. Things like your grass is too long or your car is dirty, etc. But when it comes to dogs, she loves to call either the police or code enforcement. A coworker/friend of mine lives close by, and Karen has called the police or whoever on his dog many times. There's even been a few fines handed out for things like dog at large, so sometimes you choose a plan and sometimes a plan chooses you. In mid-October, I was shopping with my brain firmly in low power mode, and I see the shelf of warning signs, including beware of large dog. The word large caught my eye and got my brain moving. Thoughts like, if I put this up, can I fool her? And if I do this, will I be a neighborhood hero? In the end, I decided not all heroes wear capes and put up the signs in front of my house. It took a few days for me to see Karen looking at my signs and then start staring at my house. Or at least it took me a while to see her kind of stalking my home. Some days she's kind of subtle, and some say she kind of does a wonder thing where she's pretty much pacing the area. About 3 weeks after putting up the signs, I was shopping at my local Goodwill because I'm classy like that, and I saw a 3-foot dog chain for $2. I was hatching my plan before I even had it in my hand. So there was a chain but no collar, and clearly I needed a big collar. I couldn't find a big collar, but I did find a woman's belt. It's thick with square studs on it, so it kind of looks like a collar for a large dog or maybe a small horse. I hope no one saw me on my drive home. I had the most evil smile on my face the whole time. So the collar and chain are hung by the door for when I would need them. My girlfriend has been rolling her eyes at me through all of this, but she's put up with weirder things from me, so she's fine. So after 4 days on the hook, I see Karen down the street. I race for the door and grab the collar with the manic glee of a child at Christmas. When Karen walks by, she sees me holding this monster collar, yelling, "Baskerville! Baskerville, come here, boy!" Followed by lots of whistling and wandering around, looking behind my car, things like that. Karen sees this and her eyes go wide, with pure but silent terror. I started to smile, so I used my hands to cup over my mouth and kept calling for Baskerville and walked behind my house. I was holding in my laughter so hard I may have gotten a hernia, but if I did, it was worth it. I have done this same thing 5 times in the last few weeks, and it's still as fun as the first time. I'm pretty sure I've wasted 14 afternoons of this woman's life. She has spent so much time trying to catch my beloved Baskerville at something she can call the cops on. So far, no one has come to my house, like a cop or whatever, and I'm pretty sure Karen has caught on to what I'm doing. But I only spent $20 on the signs and collar/belt, so I feel like I got my money's worth. The last story is titled, My Wife Just Died, but don't worry, the hunt is on for a new one. Several years ago, I received a call from an old friend's husband that she had drowned while they were on vacation. After describing the accident and the plans for the memorial services, the husband told me not to worry about him, he would be looking for a wife soon. I chalked it up to shock, but the man was always full of himself. Who starts talking about looking for a new wife when his current wife just died? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.